We will hear from a panel of election commissioners. It will be Dustin Czarny, Erik Haight, and Mary Eager. Please correct me if I have pronounced your name incorrectly.
Hi, I'm Mary Eager from Madison County. I first want to thank you for inviting us. I've been waiting anxiously to talk to all of you. I was able to sit through the hearings in person and or just listening to them through my computer, so it's been definitely an interesting process. I don't know how I was selected to be on such a stellar panel, but, and to get chosen to go first. I'm going to try to really put my blinders on and talk about specifically congressional district. I am from Madison County, right dead center in the middle of the state. We have 40,000 registered voters. And the congressional district was my first year as commissioner. I did have some experience as deputy, but it was my first year as commissioner. I was lucky enough to have a commissioner that I worked with that had numerous years, and we kind of had a system, and I had worked with her 4 years prior to as a deputy as well. So in starting to look at the congressional district, I have to go back to 2019, and I know that it was touched upon between some of the other presentations today, but that was the introduction of early voting. We decided as a county that we would hurry and get these poll pads out there. We would rather do that transition in an off year than a presidential year. So we wanted our inspectors to have that experience. So we were really pushing hard at trying to get our inspectors up to par. We were trying to train on equipment that wasn't even approved by the state. And so it was definitely, and they couldn't make it fast enough. The vendors were having a hard time. So after that election, we had it in our own office. It was very contained, and we had procedures that we had made up as far as early voting. But there was a way to contain that versus looking forward. We knew that there were going to be changes coming as well. So after we kind of learned in 2019 what the process would be, we thought, okay, we got this. You know, we've got plans. We can handle this. And then COVID hit in 2020. Along with the slew of executive orders that we've all discussed, things that I don't think we were ready for as a state. Things were happening very quickly that we had to come up with policies and procedures. And so it was difficult, you know, to be able to do absentees for a state that didn't have the capability or the experience of being pretty much, our absentees were out of control. So elections were amping up and things were shutting down. You know, poll sites were a struggle. Getting inspectors trained was a struggle. Having the places that we could do that. We didn't really have a lot of time to plan things and how the procedures were. We were just doing it. We were opening envelopes. We were training people. We were doing all the things that we normally do in elections. But we didn't have the time. So we talk about like again, in a few different panels, you've heard that grants and money that we're giving, or create a list of what your needs are. We didn't even know what our needs were. We weren't even thinking about what our needs were. We were thinking about how to get to the end and be successful. So again, I think I'm spending a lot of time on, you kind of get it. There was a lot of things that we were trying to adjust to. I'm spending a lot of time on the pre stuff, but you hit the election and it's like, thank goodness, it's here, celebrate. And as everybody in the state, everybody was saying, we're done, we just started. We started another battle. After 10 days of early voting and 2 days of, it was nonstop, 50, 60 days straight of just election stuff and keeping our head above water. Luckily, from 2019 to 2020, our legislation allowed us to hire 2 more full-time staff. That was huge for us to be able to do that. But training definitely was an issue and continues to be. With all these new things that we are being asked to do, comes more equipment and more training, and these inspectors are used to seeing these things once a year, maybe twice a year. Early voting, it's a whole different ball game. And it's not, our inspectors are not used to not closing down the machines at the end of the night. So that puts the pressure on us as a board to be there and ensure that things are being done correctly and accurately. And so it's been a lot. Let's see, I'm just kind of taking you know, I think that overall, we as a county came out unscathed in some ways. Like, again, New York City, we learned from it. We're coming up with policies and procedures as we speak. It kind of almost feels like a breath of air for this election. There hasn't been the executive orders, there hasn't been the changes, and we can just focus on the things and fine-tuning the areas that we need to fine-tune to ensure that congressional district does not happen. The reason why congressional district happened to us is because of the numbers. In 2018, we had the same candidates, and it was a 3,000 spread. Because 2 years later, we had a 300 spanned, 28,000 that went down to 12 that went back up to, as everybody was celebrating Thanksgiving and Christmas. We were there. We were there, standing and saying we're doing the right thing here. It is frustrating to hear that, you know, people are not convinced that that the numbers are accurate. I feel in my county they were accurate. You know, we did what a judge told us to do. I feel like we did right by the voters in Madison County. I feel that we did all the things that we had to do. Again, thank you for your time. I'm not going to hold you. I know that you guys have questions too, and I encourage.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Erik Haight. It's okay. It's how I weed out the telemarketers.
Exactly.
Thank you for the invitation, Senators. Thank you for the invitation to testify this morning on this critical subject, and thank you for your service to New York. I know public service is a thankless calling, and we all appreciate you answering that call. Like I said, my name is Erik Haight. I'm one of the elections commissioners from Dutchess County. I'm also the Republican caucus chairman for the Elections Commissioners Association, elected by my colleagues, despite my best efforts to pass that off to someone else. But with that, the party structure serves a vital purpose and has done so effectively for generations. The respective parties vet candidates for a variety of public offices, as you know, including state Senate, Supreme Court justices, and elections commissioners. The parties conduct interviews, issue endorsements, valuable in a primary, of course, and due to the most dedicated and publicly elected committee members that serve this vital function of vetting candidates, helping candidates get elected, stay elected, and in very much the same way, election commissioners go through the same process, the same vetting process. Like you, we go before our county committees every 2 or 4 years, depending on the county, and then we must be appointed by our county legislators. While you go before the electorate, we go before our legislators, and we serve the same people, and we try to do that to the best of our abilities. We don't police ourselves. We can be removed from office in the middle of a term. As has been discussed, an election commissioner may be removed for cause by the governor, but also under the public officers law. If any of us were to violate our oaths of office, the office can be vacated by the county attorney. In addition, as we saw in one instance in CD 22, if the public pressure is warranted, they will resign. These instances of misconduct are rare because the overwhelming majority of us are dedicated to free and fair elections. The same party structure that vets public officials and commissioners has also effectively screened judicial candidates for decades. The parties screen and nominate state Supreme Court justices in addition to every level of the judiciary. If our bipartisan system is adequate enough for judges that are above reproach, then it must be maintained for commissioners. In prior hearings, I've heard members say the bipartisan construct should be disposed of and that our respective staff should be professionalized. Respectfully, on behalf of my staff and all the election workers across this state, under the worst of circumstances, grueling hours, weeks of not seeing our families, with literally the weight of democracy on our shoulders, we are and will remain professional. With the exception of our deputy commissioners, every other employee of the BOE is a joint appointment of the board, meaning both commissioners must agree on who to hire and fire. Another stark example of our credibility. In my county, we confer with each other for personnel actions. Like elected officials, we appoint qualified people who tend to be politically active because these are the people who apply. Like elected officials, we don't always publicly post those vacancies because, frankly, it invites mountains of applications for people that either aren't qualified or don't understand the breadth of the responsibilities. You hire folks who are like-minded, that share your cause, your ideals, that will best serve your constituencies. We do the same with the added level of scrutiny that both commissioners must agree before the applicant is hired. That person is told upfront of the intense workload prior to employment. Civil service employees, union bosses, labor agreements that apply to everyone else, frankly, would prove to be a disaster for elections in New York State. Based on the laws passed over the last few years, there is no way that elections could be administered as smoothly as they were last year with civil service employees. The most profound example of this in my county last year was 57 straight days of work, nights and weekends, just to barely keep our heads above water, side by side with our Democratic counterparts. This situation occurred all over New York with no grievances, no labor litigation, and nobody asking for a thank you. What we do ask for is that if one county falters and if one city makes a mistake, to not indict the entire system that has proved effective for decades. We take pride in our work, our staff members, and our results. What we ask for are resources. What we need is a moratorium on election law changes. And also the opportunity for more training, along with the opportunity for us to succeed to the betterment of the voters and their confidence in us. The fast and furious volume of election reforms, executive orders, set the stage for election professionals to fail. In a few areas we did. But the proposals to throw the baby out with the bathwater undermines the quality work achieved by the 99.9% of us that succeeded under the most challenging of circumstances, with some stingy county legislatures that pinch pennies while we adhere to an avalanche of new mandates. Irrespective of whether we agree or not with these changes, we follow them religiously. Again, side by side with our counterparts, we raise the integrity of the profession we chose. We enhance the franchise at every opportunity, and every facet of administering elections is kept accurate and honest. And again, thank you for your attention.
Good afternoon. Thank you once again for having me back. My name's Dustin Czarny. I'm the Onondaga County Democratic Elections Commissioner, but I'm also the caucus chair for the New York State Elections Commissioner Association Democratic Caucus. I have submitted written testimony, so I'm just going to summarize some of the points that I feel may have been left out of the previous panels. First and foremost, I want you to know that I consider myself a voter first, and I take that attitude into my elections commissioner job. I'm a voter first, elections commissioner second, and then a reformer and caucus chair after that. And this is the type of attitude that I believe most commissioners throughout New York State have. We want to improve the service that we can give to our county citizens and fellow neighbors. I do believe in the bipartisan administration of elections here in New York. I think it is one of the best systems, but every system has its faults, and I think it can be improved. However, one of the things that has been left out of the discussion today is that our bipartisan system delivers a result that is believed on all sides because there are representatives from the two major parties involved in every decision that we make. It is involved in ballot checking, in polling place locations, in early voting locations, and while sometimes those conflicts between the parties rear its head inside of the commissioner's offices, at the end of the day, the results of the election are rarely, if ever, in doubt. And that is a wonderful outcome of our system, especially in the light of the national trend of questioning election results as a matter of process instead of a matter of reality. Of course, we do see that in New York 22, we did have some issues in upstate New York. I'm from upstate. I'm in the neighboring county of New York 22, but I'm in the media market, so believe me, I was following it just as much as anybody else. But I can guarantee you that 90% of the issues that came out of New York 22 came out of three different factors. An overwhelming amount of absentee ballots that were not planned for when we started this election. In my county alone, we usually have about 3% of our ballots cast by absentee. We had 25% of our ballots cast by absentee with overwhelming turnout. So from 2019, we went from 3,000 absentee ballots to 60,000 absentee ballots in 2020. This is not something that we knew going into 2020, but we rose to the occasion. However, with all of those absentee ballots came an extra scrutiny on them. Let's face it, the ideology behind mail-in ballots were skewed in the 2020 election. Overwhelmingly, one party took advantage of this option where one party shunned it to vote on election day. That created an opportunity for challenging ballots at a rate that we've never seen before. Lawyers descended upon boards of elections all throughout New York State, and that slowed down the process. And in New York 22, we found hiccups that we normally would resolve in our certification process, but it came to light because it was such a hyper close race under the scrutiny of courts. But where there was problems, there was a solution. There was a problem with the Oneida County Board of Elections that's well documented. I can tell you that the two new commissioners that are taking on that board are fabulous, and they are already starting to turn that board around. However, when they did leave, and it did show up a problem with our system where only the governor can remove commissioners for cause. I agree with Commissioner Kellner that the New York State Board of Elections should have that authority to not just remove commissioners for cause, but to set up mandatory training and disciplinary actions if we are non-compliant. This is important to improving our structure. I gave a few different examples in my written testimony of other improvements, but I'm going to briefly touch on some of the more important ones. Senator Rath, you brought up, has anybody thought of a structure for staffing? Well, somebody has. Senator Mannion has put in a bill last year, S6684A, and that goes to use the voter registration population as a way to provide minimum staffing structures, because we do have stingy county legislatures that want to treat boards of elections as bastard stepchildren because they don't control our hiring process, because they don't control us, yet they have to provide an adequate funding. And that adequate funding, there is no formula for that. So we have to go from county legislature to county legislature and like paupers with our hands out every year. And then the county legislatures decide whether we need that money, but they're not versed in the new election laws. They haven't, and sometimes oppose them outright. So, and we don't have that luxury to oppose these mandates. We want them to succeed. We need the funding to do so. And also giving boards of elections commissioners a little bit of space to get away from their parties. 4-year terms, staggered, with full-time commissioners in every county above a certain voter registration level is important, because this is a full-time job. The political calendar starts in January. It doesn't end until December. Maybe then we get a couple weeks off. But we are in it all year long with election events all year long. So I know that I'm a little bit over my time, and I know it's been a long day. So I yield to any questions that may come.
Thank you very much. We will start with Senator Mayer.
First of all, thank you all for being here, and thank you to you and your staff for a very challenging time, and so I appreciate that. I had some specific questions. Are any of you, in addition to serving as commissioners, chair of your respective county party? And if you are not, do you believe that there should be a prohibition on serving as party, county chair, and election commissioner?
I am not. I can say that, you know, the law allows for it now, and
yes.
So and I am a caucus chair of a multi-member caucus that some of them are party chairs. I can tell you my personal opinion is I would never want that job. I feel that with the city of Syracuse.
Well, I'm not sure anyone.
I'm not sure, yeah, right, well, who does? But with the city of Syracuse having multiple primaries every year, I feel I try to be publicly neutral in those primaries. Everyone expects a Democratic elections commissioner to support a Democrat in the general election, and the Republican elections commissioner to support a Republican in the general election. But I don't feel how I could be neutral as a party chair in a primary, so I personally have decided never to seek that office.
Now, what about the others? Sorry, it's not in my eye.
I am not. I am not, and I am actually not even a part of the committee. But I choose to go to my city committee meetings, and I have also offered to any of the towns in Madison County, like if you want us as Board of Elections to come out and talk to you about petitions or assisting people in getting on on ballots, that I would be willing to do that, but I'm not part of the committee.
I am not a party chair, but I think Commissioner Czarny touched on something vital to that question, and that is he would never want that job. And I think in various counties throughout the state, nobody wants the job. So in some cases, not only are we dealing with very small counties where there's not a lot of people really interested in doing the job, in some cases, I think the commissioners that are party chairs would be happy to offload it, yet no one is willing to take on that responsibility. As far as conflicts of interest, there are ways to work around that within the office in a primary situation. But like I said, I think many party chairs that are commissioners would prefer just to wear one hat, but don't have the option.
Okay.
Which would they keep?
That's a personal decision.
Well, one is a paying job. Let's
That helps.
Another question I have is about the any personnel issues that arise within the Board of Elections. Since the employees are not civil service, and other than the deputy commissioners, I guess they're hired generally jointly by both parties, If there's a personnel matter, what is the path for any employee to complain about the way they are treated in the Board of Elections?
So in my county, we use the Onondaga County Personnel Office to help mediate any personnel disputes. As has been said, all of our employees are represented by a union, so there are union avenues there as well. I will say that I don't think it's necessarily every office that has the policy of both commissioners hire, both commissioners
Yes,
fire below the deputy. Some of them, have individuals. In my county, our system is 1 to hire, 2 to fire. That protects the employee, but allows for the commissioners to hire their own staff. So we utilize the union grievance processes and the county personnel department for any personnel-related matters.
Mr. Haight?
In my case, Senator, there's procedures set up through the Human Resources Department that employees can take advantage of should they need to.
The county human resources?
Correct.
Okay.
Same thing, county. If I had any issues or my counterpart had issues, I would first go to personnel and then go from there.
So you work cooperatively with your county
Yes.
personnel or human resources department? Okay. And the last thing is about the training. I know, Commissioner Czarny, you spoke in favor of it. Do you have a proposal for exactly what kind of training you propose?
Well, I think it's important to remind the public that there is training that goes on now biannually with our New York State Elections Commissioner Association, and most of that training is done by the State Board of Elections employees. The biggest problem we have with that is that it is not mandatory, and so many counties will not pay for their commissioners to attend these vital conferences when laws are being changed, during session and after session. We need our commissioners there. It needs to be mandatory, and I believe it needs to be certified by the State Board of Elections. And I think if you make it mandatory, the counties then have to pay for those to attend, and then we can have a certification process through the State Board of Elections.
Along with that, I think for new commissioners, we have a piece of our conference that is designated for new commissioners, but coming in as somebody that was a deputy and went to commissioner status, I feel like just a more intense, just kind of plan, even for like a 4-year cycle. But I will tell you, our conference, we get this book from one of our vendors that has all of the commissioners and what their contacts are. And that is huge. It is huge to be able to reach out to these individuals and be like, hey, what did you do with this? Or how are you handling that? And the state board too, but hearing it from another fellow commissioner is vital.
Thank you. Commissioner, do you have an opinion about that?
I agree largely with what Commissioner Czarny had to say. With anything, the devil's in the details. But resources, training, if we have time to enhance the training and come up with a standard manual, that would be outstanding. The last couple of years didn't lend itself. Either the rules were changing or we were in the midst of administering an election. But yes, I'm all for training.
If I could follow up,
Yes.
just one brief thing. One of my proposals is for 4-year commissioner terms, but the important part of that proposal is that they're staggered, so you never have 2 brand new commissioners in a Board of Elections office. So I made a suggestion in there. I'm open to any real suggestion, but you could have one start in the governor's year, 1 start in the presidential year, and that way you never have 2 brand new commissioners in an office, because the working relationship of the commissioners, having somebody in there that knows a little bit when you come in new, it was incredibly helpful for me.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Mayer. Senator Rath.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, Mary, Dustin, and Eric, thank you for your comments, your testimony, and the hard work that you do for the elections within your communities and your perspective statewide. Eric, you made the comment of 57 straight days of work, and I think we need to hear that as elected officials, to know the dedication, the selflessness, and the tenacity that you all have in carrying out the work that you do. And Dustin, you said, and I really, really appreciated this, bipartisan systems, the bipartisan system delivers a result that is believed on all sides. I really appreciate that, and I think that's 100% spot on accurate. So thank you for sharing that with us. A couple questions. The first has to do with broadband connectivity. And with Madison County, Onondaga County, and Dutchess County, we have sort of a broad swath here, if you will, of rural and agricultural, suburban agricultural and urban, as well as suburban agricultural and somewhat urban. This has always been a huge concern of mine back in the days when I was in the county legislature and even today as a state senator, because we have broadband deserts all across New York State. It's not just rural and agricultural. There are suburban deserts, there are urban deserts. And I guess I'm wondering, my question is how the challenge of broadband connectivity ties into poll book connectivity, and if there are broadband deserts or broadband disruptions, how those are handled.
So, if you don't mind, I like Madison County in 2019, our county, my fellow commissioner and I made the decision to go to full electronic poll books on election day as well as for early voting. Rip that Band-Aid right off, and because we, not only did we want to be able to train the inspectors on it, but we wanted that connectivity of being able to have, for the first time ever, a peep inside the polling places to see what turnout was. Reporters would call me and say, what's turnout? Before then I'd say, I don't know, you tell me, you're out there, I'm in the office. But what we found that was the best solution for Onondaga County is our poll book vendor. We actually bypassed the poll book vendor and went directly to Verizon to get cellularly connected iPads. So we weren't dependent on Wi-Fi in some of our polling places. And we have some very rural parts of Onondaga County. And we did some testing before we put it out there. And the Wi-Fi connectivity works in those rural parts. In fact, the places where the cellular connectivity works in those rural parts. The problems I've had is when I have polling places in basements with concretes around them. But it's important to remember that once those poll pads connect, then the data is shared on election day. You don't have to worry about people going from place to place. But even in those places where I had problems connecting, I could see it on my dashboard. And I would call the poll site manager and say, take that poll pad outside for 5 seconds. It'll connect, upload, it connects to the other poll pads that are inside the polling place. And so we're able to get that voter history up. I haven't had a major issue in broadband connectivity in my rural parts of Onondaga County.
Is that the same for you, Mary, and the same for you, Eric, in your counties?
It is the same for me. We went with the wireless option as well with Verizon. I was not commissioner then, but I was part of that transition. And again, there's probably 1 or 2 poll sites that we had a little bit more challenging because it was in a basement or, but our IT was really good about just getting out there and trying to figure out what would work, so.
Senator, yes, I think the broadband deserts definitely are not unique to just rural areas like Dustin and Mary touched on. In a city center, in the city of Poughkeepsie where I'm from, right outside the steps of the middle school, the cell service is perfect. As soon as you walk in the lobby, no service. So, we come up with solutions with Wi-Fi, hotspots, but in some areas, we don't have any connection at all on the general election day. During the early voting period, we intentionally selected sites where we would have constant connectivity with those poll pads. We don't have that luxury on a general election day, because in some areas, there's maybe one structure, an entire election district that's available as a poll site. But it is a problem. Certainly, we're gonna have to come up with some strategies if we start canvassing absentee ballots during early voting to ensure that, everybody gets one vote. And these are strategies and these are challenges that we're gonna have to overcome. It may not be easy, but we'll certainly do our best. But yes, connectivity is an issue, and it varies by county. I know that there's, whether it's Dutchess County or Madison or Onondaga or New York City, there are spots everywhere where a poll site just simply doesn't have connectivity.
Sounds good. I have other questions, but I'll hold off for now.
Thank you, Senator Rath. Senator May.
Thank you. And Mary, I just want to say, Madison County did come out looking pretty good in the 22nd Congressional District, so well done you.
Thank you.
Dustin, I wanted to follow up on what Senator Rath said about the bipartisanship sort of forestalling the kinds of doubts that people had. Have we seen much like the kinds of acts of hatred or threats against poll workers or election workers in this state that we see elsewhere?
I can only really speak from my personal experience. The temper and the temperature has been rising since 2016. And it really even rose during the primaries of 2016. I did notice a rising increase of angrier and angrier people that came into my office. Luckily, no incidents, but it did lead us to invest in security in the office itself. And thanks to a New York State grant for security, that's become possible. I have noticed more watchers coming to our election. We used to do pre-lat of election machines. We'd send out the notices. Nobody would care. They wouldn't come. We have more people coming, which I welcome, because then they see the bipartisan teams working on each individual machines, programming them, that they're not connected to the internet, and they see the things in place. I do believe that one of the reasons that we're not seeing as much as we see in other states is because each party gets to go to their elections commissioner and their staff that are working there and get assurances that things are being handled in a bipartisan way, and that no one can do anything, and no one would do anything, but no one can do anything without the other party catching it. And I think that has lowered the temperature a little bit more than we see in the Arizona fake audits and the Georgia, stuff that was going on. So yes.
Okay, thanks. And then I wanted to ask two other questions. One was about local elections. There are so many, and especially with early voting, it becomes so much more work for all of you. Do you have any latitude or any input into trying to consolidate some of those smaller elections so that, they can be held
I'll tell you one place, I'm sorry, I'll tell you one place where I feel like we could consolidate elections, and that's village elections. The fact that we still allow villages to hold elections in March and June, and not just the June primary date, but 1 week before the June primary date, creating more election events in our calendar. And these elections are incredibly low turnout and incredibly low participation when it comes to the candidate side as well, because their petition times are at weird and odd times, and people aren't thinking about running for office. And I think that's by design, unfortunately. But I strongly recommend moving the village elections to November to my villages, but I can't compel them. They have to do it voluntarily, or their citizens can demand it. However, the legislature could compel them. And the legislature could move village elections to coincide with the June primary and the November election. And I think you would see higher turnout and higher participation in those village elections if they do so.
Thank you. So then my last question was about ballot initiatives. So we heard from the first group of statewide commissioners about the idea of educating voters. And I know we have several ballot initiatives this year. People are going to have to turn the ballot over. There's a whole sort of range of kinds of education that have to go on. But even when they turn it over, a lot of them are kind of technical or difficult to understand. When I lived in California, we would get a book that was the size of a phone book that went through the dozens and dozens of ballot initiatives, and it had an explanation and then had a statement in favor and a statement against by people who were educated and active on those things. And it was really, really helpful, and I just wonder, is there any effort to do that kind of thing here in New York State? Because what we heard from the commissioners was best to leave it to the campaigns, but that means you're leaving it to whoever's got the money to get the word out, whereas if the Board of Elections can do it, it becomes, you can weigh both sides more easily.
We don't do anything like that. I think mostly, as far as I'm concerned, it's been a time issue. There's no way that I could spend the time on something like that because I'm trying to run elections the best that I can. As far as specifics to questions and stuff, I always try to give the voter an area that they can research it. And we put the sample ballots out, we put the props out. It's wallpapered on the whole window of the Board of Elections in Madison County. You can see every single ballot. It's on our website. We do legal releases, but they're never going to print that in their papers. We try our best to get the information out. We do encourage students to come in and listen. We go to schools and show them the ballots. We send out samples to libraries and post office, and I mean, we try our best to get the information out there, not so much for one candidate over another or one view over another.
Thank you.
I really believe that one of the key issues to helping with the ballot initiatives would be to get rid of the full-face ballot and maybe even have an alter to fusion voting and allowing candidates to only appear on one line with their parties next to them, giving us more space on the front of the ballot to put these ballot initiatives there instead of on the back, where they're often not seen by the voter. That's something, again, the legislature can direct us to do.
Well, I would adopt Commissioner Kozinski's answer to that question for the sake of time. But the number of props on the ballot this year have become cumbersome. In a local year, the locals view it as this is their ballot this year. And there are, one or two props in a town, then a library prop, and next thing you know, there's 9 props on the back of the ballot. And you have to have a microscope to be able to read these props because what we've had to do with the font to fit it on there is not friendly to the voter, but the sample ballots that we do provide not only on our websites and at the poll site and at the office, should someone wish to come and look at it, is in a much larger size and a larger font, and people can read it at their leisure and do research on their own.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator May. Senator Borrello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really don't have a question, just wanted to make some comments. First of all, thank you all for being here. I know each of you, and even Dustin, you and I have communicated on things in the past. What I like about this panel in particular is you're talking about rural areas to more urban areas, suburban areas, Republicans and Democrats, and you are basically agreeing that we haven't provided enough resources. But I just want to make a comment on the whole idea of this term professionalize. I think I take offense to that because I think you're all professionals, number one. Number two, we just spent a lot of intense time with the folks from New York City. And Erik, all of those, all those things that you brought up that may happen if we quote unquote professionalize the offices are the reality apparently in New York City, according to the testimony we just heard from the panel 2 before you. That all those things that could disrupt our election process and shake people's confidence in our elections seem to be happening in New York City, based on the testimony that we just heard. So, I think the idea that professionalizing is, you guys are professional, and quite frankly, as Senator Rath said, and Dustin, I agree with what you said. You have delivered a product that people have confidence in the results of. It's not about throwing out the baby with bathwater, but if it's, we're trying to break something that isn't broken, quite frankly. And I'm not even going to say fix it. We're trying to break something that isn't broken. And that concerns me a lot because you all are professionals. and you have turned out results that people have confidence in. And to me, out of everything we do, when it comes to election law, preserving the integrity and confidence in what the people perceive our elections are is number one, absolutely number one. People have to believe that our elections are legitimate, and they have to have confidence that the people that are working hard every day, like all of you, are focused on the same goal, regardless of party. And you are. So to take that and say that we're going to, maybe turn it into more of a scenario where we have issues with, as all the things you brought up, Eric, grievances and so forth, that are going to disrupt the confidence and integrity of our elections is very concerning for me. So thank you all for what you do. You are indeed professionals. And I look forward to have more ways to support you to do what you do. So thank you.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. I do agree with that as well. I mean, I understand some of the calls for professionalization. I think it's a knee-jerk reaction, but you don't learn elections somewhere else. You learn elections inside the election boards. I have a policy of hiring from the bottom and then moving people up as we go through. Sometimes I've had to remove people that didn't work out, and sometimes I think it's a myth out there that party structures tell me who to hire. I can guarantee you that doesn't happen in my county. It doesn't happen with my counterpart. No. I think that's overblown. It's outside of New York City. I'm not going to speak to New York City. I don't live in New York City. But I will say that when we talk about funding, I always come to this legislature asking for more funding every year, but I do want to stress that this is also a county function as well. And the county governments need to come to the table and provide adequate resources at the beginning so the New York State funds that come in can amplify our resources. All too often, the funds that come in from New York State are siphoned off with cuts at the local level. We need standards that the counties need to follow to provide equity in each and every county, so citizens that are moving from county to county are not seeing disparate levels of service.
Well, yeah, and I agree with that. I'm certainly, as a 10-year veteran of county government, I'm sure the response would be, the unfunded mandates that the state forces on us is problematic. So, but I agree with you. This is about funding. As one of the commissioners said, that we can do anything you want as long as you give us the money to do it, and right. And that is true. But we have a history of not doing that, of saying, here are all these new mandates. We passed 80 new laws with not nearly enough money to support it, and certainly not enough time, not enough runway to get off the ground in enough time, and that could be disastrous. So again, I appreciate your professionalism, and yes, if we're going to pass these things down, we should fund it, whether it's to the Board of Elections or to the county or both, but that's the only way we're going to have confident elections.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Borrello. Senator Krueger.
Thank you. Thank you all three of you. I was going to say I have to disagree with my colleague, and I think we were both listening to the same presentation. I think you are making recommendations for improvements, and I agree with them. And you're talking about wanting actually more professionalization for yourselves because you want to be respected as full-time employees. You want better training from the Board of Election, the State Board of Election, which I think is absolutely the right answer for everybody. You want to be able to, remove people who aren't doing their jobs. You want electronic poll books, which I think is a huge step forward for all of us everywhere in the state, and can lead us to ultimately having, a printer that can just print out the ballot for you wherever you show up to vote in your county or your community, helping to improve human error through ballot recanvasses. And I appreciate your level of detail of where and when you think you need to move from a mechanical recount to a manual recount. And I think a number of people today talked about maybe we took a step too far. Maybe we have to jigger the percentages to actually make sure we have legitimate, transparent recount of close elections, but not perhaps at the expense of taking months to get through election counting. But I really wanted to ask you about machines. because New York City is very concerned about their options with new machines and going to, knowing that they need them, but very nervous about the options out there. And I remember, because I've been a senator now for, it'll be 20 years in February, which is a little scary to me, I have to say. I'm adjusting to that concept. So I remember the Help America Vote Act requirements, and we had to say goodbye, 400-pound, lot, I used to think of it more as a slot machine. A 400-pound slot machine, you had no idea if your vote really counted or not. You just pulled the lever and hoped as you left. And no one could ever audit to know whether or not your vote counted or not. But we got rid of those, and we picked a new set of machines. New York City was, I think, the last place in the country to come up with a decision for itself. And a lot of other counties at the time waited to see what New York City would do, and others went their own path. And I'm really curious from outside of now New York City, because all of you are from different parts of the state, where do you feel you are when it comes to decisions and options for new machines for yourself for the next generation of voting?
Well, I think that one of the issues that New York City just brought up is unique to New York City in that they have, I believe, 9 different languages that they have to be ready for and program for on their BMDs. I believe the rest of the state is just 2 languages, and but I believe that's the case. At least it is in my county. I'm very satisfied with the product we have. When sort of the coup.
Have you chosen new machines recently? Or
yes.
You have, okay.
Yes. We just replaced the first generation BMD with the Dominion product of ice machines, which we're very happy with. It's obviously a more modern machine, but it's also easier on the inspectors to start up in the morning, easier to close down, less paper jams, et cetera. But with that, when sort of after the last presidential election, and I want to be kind here, but the conspiracy theorists that were running with what they saw in the news or maybe various websites questioning vote swapping and things of that nature, I was able to, with a straight face and honestly, tell these folks, whether it was in person, over the phone, or via email, that the machine that we use works. It is absolutely hack-proof. There is no vote swapping going on, and I'm, with full transparency, would invite anybody to come to our training and warehouse facility to watch us work. And so from my standpoint, to answer that question, I'm very satisfied with the option that we have. I'm not familiar with the SNS, but we're very happy with Dominion.
So I'm a Dominion County also. However, I am still on the version 1 ImageCast machines that we got in 2008. Our county has not had the money to do a full swap out of machines, and we are targeting the end of 2022 to skip the ICE generation of machines, and we're waiting for the next generation of machines to be certified by the state board. We know that Dominion, Hart, and Clear Ballot are preparing to submit their new version of machines to the state board over the next several months, and we anxiously await for them to be certified, so then we can go to our county and be anxiously awaiting for them to tell them that we have a $2.5 million bill coming your way. And with no grant money really to be able to spend that on. We have a little bit of grant money, but that's covering other things. So we'll probably have to go into a capital funding for that. But I don't believe that we are alone in that, in that. I will say that the new version of BMDs is going to be able to help New York City and places with a lot of language, because we have some of the same problems in Onondaga, because we have so many different ballot styles that we have to trot out 3 different BMD machines to our early voting sites to be able to have all the ballot styles and all the audio for those ballot styles on there. Now, they're only BMDs. We have scanners that they put the ballots in, and the BMDs are there for the convenience of the disabled voters or the voters that need that machine. But they're rarely used, and they do take up space in our in our early voting sites. So I'm looking forward to being able to have one BMD in those sites and even a smaller footprint BMD. Some of the other stuff have like large tablets that are used as your BMD with a regular printer that prints a ballot on there that marks for them, that goes into your scanner. So new machines are on the way, but we're gonna need money to help many counties be able to do this with.
And Mary?
Yes, I am with Erik. We have a full deployment of ICE machines. Our county administration has been just very good at giving us what we need to be successful. We're very happy with it. It's really easy to use. There's a few little things that, you know, if I was creating it, I would change, but nothing. It's more cosmetic and more about user friendly. If the door would open up like this versus, you know, this, or small things like that. But ICE is what we chose, and it's working out great.
Apparently we should all move to Madison County, everything goes right.
One language too.
Well, that's a different issue. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out, I have a poll site in my district that has more slots for voting than your entire county
Oh,
population.
yes, I'm sure. I'm sure.
I had a 100,000 person poll
I'm not
site.
moving to
so-
your county.
We have a lot of other good things, though. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Krueger. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for your time and for your testimony. And we will be moving to the next panel. Thank you for
I
your
just
time.
have one more comment. I invite any of you to Madison County to see what we do. Any of the commissioners, I know that they would have any of you there. You want to come in and watch us do one piece of the election, I invite you. So.
All right, we just might take you up on that.
If
So,
you're in Senate District, you're all welcome.
He loves running around the state.
yeah. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Senators.
The next